With WrestleMania 38 now in the books, Roman Reigns has unified the WWE and Universal Championships, leaving the company once again with a single top champion for the first time in 6 years. There's a lot of debate over whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, and in this special two-part series, we're going to look at both arguments. First up, join me as we look at the argument as to why title unification is a good thing on this episode of WrestleJuice. Hey friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to WrestleJuice. This week we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to be taking one single topic, and we're going to be taking a look at both sides of that topic. Good idea, bad idea. This week we're talking about, of course, title unification. Roman Reigns holding both those titles up high. The Usos wanting to hold all four of those tag titles up high, which will probably end up happening. Where will they stop? Are they going to keep doing this with the women's titles? Are they going to do it with the Intercontinental and United States Championship title? I'm not even sure geographically that'll be something they can do. So I think it's a pretty interesting topic, and I think that there's two legitimate arguments for title unification, yay, and title unification, nay. Today, we're going to talk about why title unification is a beautiful thing and why they should have done it a long time ago. On Wednesday, we're going to take a look at why it's a terrible idea and why they should never do it and they should get rid of it as soon as possible. First up, do me a huge favor, give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. Hey, if you don't like the video, by the time it's over, you can take that thumbs up away and maybe you'll like the next one. Anyways, to kick things off today, we're gonna drop a metaphor or an allegory or a analogy. It's one of those things. I don't know. I wasn't a lit major. Let's say, for example, you're going into a bar and you're looking to impress some people and you just climbed Mount Everest, which is a pretty impressive thing to hang your hat on. And you can go, you open this bar, you're like, barkeep, I just climbed Mount Everest, I'll have a beer. And the barkeep's like, oh man, I'll give you one on the house. And all the women are there and they're like, wow, he's cool. And then some other dude rolls in there. He's like, hey, how's it going? I just climbed, I don't know, name some shitty smaller mountain than Everest, right? I didn't do that much research for this. And everybody's like, wow, man, you're great. That's awesome. Here, free beer. And you're sitting there like, what the fuck? I climbed Mount Everest. This guy climbed a mountain that's way shittier than that, and he's still getting the same treatment. That right there is why title unification is a beautiful thing, because it prevents that situation from happening, because that's the B champion, and there shouldn't be a B champion. Think back to the days of Bruno Sammartino, Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Yokozuna, hell, Diesel. You had one guy in the company who was the guy. You had one title with one lineage, and each name added to that lineage was special, was unique, added something to the lineage, and the title was the thing, and it was one title, and the coolest one was that Winged Eagle title, but then they got rid of that, and it was a beautiful thing. And then this thing happened where Vince McMahon decided to buy WCW. And originally, the plan was for WWE to just spin off a WCW into its own brand, treat it kind of like its own company, I guess in kayfabe, and the two really wouldn't meet. It'd be two separate things, and maybe they'd meet for like, I don't know, whatever their Survivor Series thing was. We didn't get that because they didn't know how to do WCW. They were going to put it on, if I recall correctly, one of them books that I read, they were going to put it on like Saturday at like 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And they weren't going to rebrand SmackDown because UPN or whoever had SmackDown at the time obviously didn't want that to be rebranded to WCW. But WWF was left with this problem. We have this massive roster. We need to split the rosters. And they were going to do it with WCW, and then they couldn't. So, Vengeance 2001, Chris Jericho, what does he do? He unifies the titles. He beats Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock in the same night, which is quite an accomplishment. You had the WCW title, and you had the WWF title, and now they're on the same person. That's kind of a big deal. That was a pretty big deal. 2001 was a crazy year in wrestling, by the way. It was absolutely nuts. Anyways, so fast forward, not even a year, I don't think. And Brock Lesnar had the Unified Championship. And what do? they move him exclusively to SmackDown because they're splitting the brands. So basically, he went from being unified champion to like de-unified champion because now he's just champion of one brand. So what do? They make the World Heavyweight Championship on Raw, which looks suspiciously like the WCW title that we all just saw happen, the big gold belt. And of course, Triple H had so much power backstage. Not only did he bring that big heavyweight gold title back, even though Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard both didn't like it. Triple H is like, yeah, but listen, here's the deal. I like this title. It's got history. It's got lineage. I'm the game now. So he is just handed this title back in 2002 to Eric Bischoff. And then for years, Triple H and that big gold belt are the thing. He's got so much power that he keeps Raw the A show, and he is the man over there on Raw. And when he's not the man, he makes sure his best friend Shawn Michaels is the guy. Until, of course, 2006, 2005 or so rolls around, and who's the new guy? It's John Cena. John Cena becomes the guy, and then it becomes less about the title and its importance and more about who's just the guy and what title does he have. For example, for a while, he was the WWF champion, and then he switched brands. He was the big gold belt champion, and then that championship mattered more than the other title. While he was WWE champion, just to illustrate a point, let's talk about ECW's One Night Stand. What does everybody remember about ECW's One Night Stand, the WWE thing that they did, right? You think of two big moments. There are two major moments in One Night Stand history that really stand out. The first one is at 2005 when Paul Heyman cuts that great promo at the end, and he says, JBL, was it the end or the beginning? I think it was the end. He says, JBL, the only reason you're champion is why? Because Triple H doesn't want to work Tuesdays. He literally cracked a joke about how one title meant more than the other title, about how title unification, it's lopsided, that they're not this on the same level. He made a joke about that. What's the other thing we remember from One Night Stand? 1 year later, when John Cena brought his WWE title over to ECW, and it was challenged by RVD, and RVD won it. And it was that amazing moment when the crowd was throwing his shirt back, and they had the sign that says, if Cena wins, we're gonna riot. And it was an amazing moment because Cena was the guy. He had the WWE title. I didn't even remember this, but Rey Mysterio defended the big gold belt at that same pay-per-view against Sabu. Nobody ever talks about that match. I don't remember much about that match, and in fact, I didn't even remember that match happened until I was researching this little video I'm doing. Yes, I did some research. Anyways, after that, we had that stretch of brand-specific pay-per-views where it felt like, for that stretch of time, Cena was pretty much the guy. Triple H wanted to be the guy, so it kind of felt like no one was the guy, but really was John Cena, and then that was that one WrestleMania where Donald Trump was the guy. And this was the era, incidentally, that Steve totally dropped out of watching wrestling. Up until that, I was like, yeah, no, I'm on board. But now you got all these different titles, there's no real face of the company. I'm pretty sure it's Cena. And then when I came back, that's right, the pipe bomb. When CM Punk threatened to take the WWE title from John Cena out of the WWE and go defend it in Ring of Honor in New Japan. And it was like, holy crap. This title actually means something. This is something to be treasured. This title is awesome, and the CM Punk guy might take it from John Cena. He's clearly the guy. But you know what? There was still a World Heavyweight Championship. It was just firmly the B title because if memory serves, SmackDown was firmly a recap show at that point, and Raw was having those super shows, and the brand split was effectively dead. It might not have been technically dead at the time, but that B title was definitely curtain-jerking WrestleMania, as I think it did that a couple times. Anyways, eventually, a couple years later, Randy Orton came by, and he unified the titles. It went through him, Daniel Bryan, John Cena, Brock Lesnar, and it wasn't long after that we got another brand split. Because SmackDown got a bunch of TV money, they went live, and so they were their own thing, and Raw was its own thing, and after a little while, they did the Survivor Series, which is kind of a cool brand versus brand thing, but at the same time, there was a period of time when, AJ Styles was champion, Dean Ambrose, that title, the WWE title, never main evented anything, because the Brock / Roman Reigns title was always the thing, which was, I think, the Universal title at that point on Raw. That makes sense because it was red. And at that point, it just went back to the way it was before with John Cena. Wherever he was the guy, and that title mattered more. Brock and Roman mattered more than anything else. We know that because Roman Reigns main evented like 15 WrestleManias in a row, starting from 2015 and going all the way to, whenever now, I guess. So, yes, that's what happened. And ever since then, throughout the Universal title era, there's always been just one guy who felt more like the guy than the other guy. And so I'm sitting there watching Raw and I'm like, oh, wow, Drew McIntyre is kind of cool. And then you get to Survivor Series and he totally loses Roman Reigns. And even in the contract signing leading up to that Survivor Series, Roman Reigns totally unmanned Drew McIntyre, almost made him cry with his promo, calling him B champion. He literally referred to him as B champion and then he beat him. Fast forward a year, it got even worse. Big E, a man I love, man that everybody loves. He was champion. He lost clean to Roman Reigns. And at that point, it's like, why is anybody chasing this non-Mount Everest? Why does anybody care about the WWE Championship at this point if it's not on the guy we all know in the company is the guy? At that point, the lineage title, the WWE title, was just a laughing joke. Ironically enough, it took the build to title unification to have a WWE champion that felt on par with Roman Reigns. And of course, that man was Brock Lesnar. That short period of time that Brock Lesnar had the WWE title on Raw mere weeks ago was the only time that it felt like, whoa, these guys are actually on par with each other. And granted, they only did that to build Brock to be beat by Roman so that Roman has that notch under his belt. But the point stands. Had they booked it that way the entire time, then maybe this would be a non-issue. Maybe the entire idea of title unification would be bad. So anyways, that's why I feel title unification is a good idea. Because at no time in the history of split brands has there been a period when both titles were treated the same, when there wasn't one guy. I go back to the days of, I know I keep saying his name and he's awfully controversial and I understand that, but when Hulk Hogan was the guy, everybody was gunning for him. When Stone Cold Steve Austin was the guy, everybody was gunning for him. When Jack Swagger was the world heavyweight champion, nobody gave a shit about him. Because there was another title out there that everybody did care about that like John Cena had and CM Punk had, etc., etc. So that's why title unification is a good idea, because they can never get it right when you've got two top champions. So you keep both titles on one guy, and maybe you can even fuse them together. You can meld them together so they can be one title again. And I'm sure they can come up with something great. My idea, you give them a gold strap for that particular title. I think that'd be great. So anyways, that's why I think title unification is a good idea. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And I'm going to let you guys know why title unification is a terrible idea. Coming up in the next episode of Wrestle Juice on Wednesday. Be sure to check that out. If you haven't, if that video is already dropped, then it's going to appear right here. You can check that video out right now. If not, for the next 2 days, if you're watching this brand new and it's live, this is going to be some other video right there. So I'll catch you over there. She's teeping right now, that little girl is. I'm not going to wake her up. She likes the sound of my manic voice.